So chances are you've been in this situation before where you have some data that you need to call out to and get for your application. And so maybe you have a client component in React because you want some interactivity or whatever it is. And so you use something like this over here where we have comments. Actually, first off, we have a really simple page here where we make a request to an API inside of a server component. And if over here on the left, you can see the server component. So this is just a dummy JSON API that I found, and we're going to be getting some blog posts. And so we have a title here, and then we have this content down here. And that's what I've got right here. I'm making this request, and then I'm just populating the page like so. But then let's say that we want to get some comments or some kind of other data that we don't necessarily need as quickly as maybe the main content page, but we still want it later on. We want to display it nevertheless. Like maybe it's the author, or maybe it's the comments, like in this case, or it could be anything else, right? And so what you might do is you might have another component that gets all the comments, and maybe this you realize needs to be a client component because you want to have some sort of interactivity. Like maybe with the comments, you want to be able to like a comment. And so it would make sense to have some sort of interactivity there, and therefore it needs to be on the client side, right? So we've probably all been there before where you create some kind of request from the client side using useEffect, right? And this is fine, it works. The problem though is that you'll see it loads a little bit after the fact, and maybe we don't want to do that. Like I personally like it when things just show up. I think that's the best experience, obviously, right? Also, I think generally speaking, people know how to use useEffect, but there are some subtleties that I hear about that I still think myself I have to learn that like make useEffect not as straightforward as a thing to use as many people might think or hope that it is. And also, this is a lot of code. Like this, it's 8 to 17. It's almost 10 lines of code that we have to add here, and maybe there's other things you need to request as well, and maybe you could extract this out and put these functions elsewhere. That's fine, but still, like I don't know, it doesn't look that clean to me personally. And so I was looking around in the React documentation trying to learn about server components, and I came across something that I thought was really interesting that I wanted to share. So specifically, if we come down here, it says that we can use async components with server components. Now, this I think is a bit weird. Like the wording here I think is a bit weird because server components can be async, but client components cannot be async. So it just felt a little bit weird to me to say async components with server components because as far as I know, server components are the only ones that can actually be async. So it just the wording there felt a little bit weird to me. However, I'm looking at this and I realize that what React also allows you to do is pass the promise between server and client boundaries, and then the client will basically get that promise. So they don't get the result of the promise, they get the promise itself, and then they can pick up the actual loading or execution of that promise. So let's take a look at what that might look like. You can see that here, and I have the example over here, so I'm just gonna jump over and show you. So let's comment this out here, and we'll uncomment out a few other things. Ignore the suspense for right now, we'll come back to that. But then we're gonna go, so check this out. So we're doing the same thing except that we're loading the comments now instead of the post itself. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the promise, but we don't await the promise. And then we're gonna pass that promise to our client component here. And over in our client component, we can use the use function from React, which I'll talk about in a second. We can use the use function from React to basically await that promise, and then we get to use the result of that promise here. So let's take a look at this now. Same thing happens. Okay, so let's see something here. It's saying, so it still works, I think, the way that it did before, where you have it does actually resolve on the client. But I guess using suspense kind of increases the perception of the performance and allows things to kind of work in a non-blocking way. One thing that we didn't do was we didn't have a fallback here. So let's add a fallback here and see if we can actually see what's going on. So let's do this. Loading. You can see that super quick right here at times, right? Did you see that? So it does not load at the same time that this does, obviously, as we can see, but it does seem to actually increase the performance as well. And you do get to benefit from suspense. You can use that and then have some sort of fallback while things are loading. So this seems to really clean up this code a lot here, because we could have like some sort of a skeleton component that we add here, making it really nice and clean. And then what we can do is we just have to have this one line here and then just use it when it's ready, just like we're doing here, basically. We use it when it's ready, right? Except that, and now we don't have to have any of our loading logic that we have before with this. Like with this, we might have to say, so we might have to do something like this, set loading, loading, and then we'd have to say Boolean, and we could set this to like true to start with. And here, what we would do is say false, set loading. And then we'd be able to say like, loading, yeah. Or this, and we'd say like, that's not what I wanted. Loading. So we would have to do something like that where we have to maintain like our own logic and our own state to be able to see when something's loading, versus here, we don't really have to do that. So like, again, why would we want to use this? One, it does seem to increase the performance of the page, be that just based on perception or if there's actually something to it. I don't know. I did do some performance testing in Chrome, and it didn't really seem to increase the performance or improve the performance at all. It really did seem to just be a perception thing, but I'll take it. Like, why not, right? Perception is great. And if you can increase the performance, the perceived performance, I mean, the React docs actually called that out, or I think it was Next.js docs that called that out about perceived performance with suspense, then like, by all means. And then the second thing is that it definitely cleans up our code a lot, I would argue, right? This versus just this. And we don't actually have to worry about the loading states at all ourselves. We can just pass in a fallback to suspense, and it kind of does everything for us. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more React, Next.js, cloud videos, and also some AI videos. And see you next one. Take care. See you.